Hello everybody and welcome back to Farming Simulator 25 and welcome back to our survival challenge on the New Frontier map. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and I love our view, man. I do. I love our view. Every time I spawn in, I just get greeted with this look. So nice to have a place to lay down. Now, there's a couple of things we're going to address before we get this party started. One, let's check out our sawmill over here, make sure it's still running. And, yep, it's got 2,400 liters of wood, so it's good for the time being. We've got 2,600 liters of fuel, so we're good there. And we got plenty of water, so we're also good there. Now, since we're good with all of that, today's episode is going to be about renewal, right? So, we have expanded recently into a new area. And so, we're going to use the old Massey Ferguson, I think, because we know that this can pull it. We're going to use the Massey Ferguson, little red over here. We're going to hook up to our tree planter and go plant some trees on the new property. Our future depends upon it. So let's do it. Now, we should have somewhere in the neighborhood of 213, I believe, trees left to plant. Ah, look at that. 213 trees. I can do math. You didn't think I could pull it off, did you? Shame on you. Now, our new property should be catty-corner to our old property, and over here in the bottom, over in the open, right? Like this whole area over here should be wide open and ready for some trees. So we're going to go over here and do this. But as we enter into the open, I do want to check our map and make sure that I am correct. So yeah, we are technically on our property now. If we go into farmland, you can see where we're at. We've got a huge amount of land to potentially plant. So I think we just start here and start working our way over. Trying to see how the best way to do this would be. Like, there's not a whole lot of room here, but I think we can get a few trees in here. So let's go ahead and turn on the tree planter, lower it, and start. I'm no expert. But it seems that we have an issue with this little red. We'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way, where we shut it off and then turn it back on, depending on getting a little bit of momentum. Either that or we go get our, you know what? Let's go get the John Deere. Clearly, Little Red is not capable of pulling that. Last time we seemed to do okay with it, but for whatever reason, it's not working this time. So, we're simply going to take Little Red back. We'll grab the John Deere. It should have plenty of horsepower to pull that, and we'll go from there. Yeah, I don't know exactly why it's not working, but it's clearly not working. So, Little Red, you get to be our mower, essentially. That is your job. Alright, let's try this again, shall we? This time with less suck. And more horsepower. If at first you don't succeed, get more horsepower. That'll solve the problem. I think that's how the saying goes, right? Surely. Now we got her. Look at that. I think we'll do one more tree in this line. And we'll pick it up and we'll reset and do the next line. All right. Now, I don't want to put everything too dense because then it becomes a problem, right? So we want to leave a little bit of a gap between the rows. But the main thing is we want to make sure that everything is in a row as best to our ability as we can. So we'll plant one there. And then we just want to drive in as straight a line as possible, trying to maintain our gap between the trees. And you'll notice that we have set it up to where our trees should be planted roughly in the gap between the trees in the front row. If I did it correctly. And so we're going to keep doing this until we run out of trees today. Which is pretty crazy to think about. That's a lot of trees. So I guess cue up the time lapse. Alrighty, so we've done it. We have planted all of the remaining trees. 213 trees have been planted. Our future is secure. But these trees won't be ready for 3 years, which means we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we survive long enough for these trees to be our future. So let's take this back to the old property and figure out what we want to go from here. Now I'm hoping that we manage to put those trees, enough spacing between them to keep us from running into issues with lag once they do build, or like once they do grow. But yeah, that'll be remaining to be seen. But we'll drop this up here, and that brings us to our next goal for today. Now that we've planted an entire forest. Oh, and for those environmentalists out there who are concerned with how things have been going with us cutting down entire forests and clear cutting everything, I want to point out one little stat, and that is how many trees we've cut down versus how many trees we have now planted. We have officially planted more trees than we have cut down, and this is something that I want to make sure that we maintain for the course of this series. So, anytime we do a clear cutting operation, our goal will be to plant more trees than we cut down. Okay? So, that is just something out there that I personally feel strongly about as somebody who grew up in the middle of the swamp, in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere, in rural southeastern central Ohio. I grew up in the swamp. I grew up in the forest. I like to maintain the natural beauty of things. And I have no problem with logging if it's done responsibly and sustainably. There's a lot of properties around where I grew up that hired a logging company to come in, and the logging company absolutely destroys the entire beauty that is the forest. All right, and we are going to make sure that not only do we cut out the old stuff and we remove those stumps, we get rid of the brush and stuff, and then we also replant after we're done. The reason being is because one of the things that you're going to notice in real life when a logging company comes in and clear cuts the forest is that part of the forest will just completely get inundated with briars and just weeds of all shapes and sizes, and it becomes basically uninhabitable for anything that doesn't have really thick fur. If you like to hunt and stuff, you really don't like to go through those kind of briars. So any place that's been logged extensively just turns into a mess. So yeah, our goal is to always make sure that we replant more trees than we planted, or than we cut down. Okay, now obviously we have 87 trees that we planted previously that we will be cutting down, so that number is always going to have to be growing, right? We're always going to end up having to replant more trees than we've cut down. Now the other thing that I forgot to mention while we were over there was this section of the property. I don't want to click the sell button. But you can notice that we planted all these trees over here, but I specifically avoided this entire section of the property over here. Now, if I look, this should still be part of our property, I believe. Then again, I could be wrong, and it looks like I may be wrong. Yeah, this is actually on the outside of our property. I was thinking this was part of our property. But I specifically avoided it. Some of it is, I guess. But I specifically avoided this part of our property, or what I thought was our property, because this is where we're going to start our arable. We're going to make this a gigantic field. We'll clear cut the trees out of the area and turn this into an arable farmland. Now that's way down the line, because now I realize that this is not actually our property. In fact, if we look at how much it's going to cost us, it's $98,000, which isn't that bad. We could easily get that in a couple of loads to buy this property. But the other thing that I want to do today specifically is to buy the equipment to start to reclaim this area and make it beautiful. Something that I feel strongly about, you guys feel strongly about, that we should turn this area into something absolutely beautiful. And I agree. And so today we're going to put some of our hard-earned money that we are going to build or to get into getting a some sort of plow or disc harrow or whatever. But that probably means we're gonna have to get a stronger tractor as well. So if we look into buying a plow, for instance, soil cultivation. If we go into plows, you can see there are some cheap options, but they are very tiny, right? Very tiny. The better option here is $50,000, but it requires 210 horsepower. We don't have that. That's 4.2 meter working width, by the way. Okay, so you can see that these aren't exactly massive plows at all, but they do require quite a bit of horsepower as well. Now, there is some cheesing that can be done here, like in particular with this lizard subsoiler right here. I believe, if I remember correctly, if we get the biggest version of this, okay, now this would require a lot of horsepower, up to 340 horsepower to be able to utilize this. But I believe that you can mount this backwards on the front of your tractor and push it instead of pulling it, and that overrides the horsepower requirement. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So that is kind of what I was thinking, even though it's a bit cheesy. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide whether or not that's too cheesy. I may just go ahead and try to opt for something that's a little bit more normal, and that is a plow. One of these little plows should be absolutely fine. We've got 2.5 meter working width, which is not a lot at all. Now, the other thing that I was going to look at would be like cultivators. Unfortunately, we don't have any like field creation mods that I'm aware of that allows you to create fields with a cultivator, which is one of my favorite things to do because having that wider width is nice. So I think if we do elect to go for a larger plow or a subsoiler like this, trying to get a little bit more horsepower is going to be something that we look for. Specifically, if we were to go for this and go for the 12 meter working width, like we would need 340 horsepower. So if we look at tractors that have 340 horsepower, how much are we looking at in terms of price? Now, that's got to be a large tractor, right? I don't think anything in here is going to have that kind of horsepower. I could be wrong. Well, there's 302. So it's actually not that far off. 302 again with the stair. $303 in the Fent. So yeah, it does look like we're going to end up having to go, and you can see the price tags of these tractors is pretty absurd. But it looks like we're going to need a large tractor in order to pull this stuff off. I don't have anything in particular in mind. Let's check. I think I have a few mods down here, most of which are still extremely expensive. But if I were to get anything, I'm thinking like something like this Case Magnum, you know, because I love me some Case tractors. I don't know why, I just do. I love the Case tractors, but this thing starts out with, what is it, 374 horsepower right out the gate without upgrading the engine. Obviously, you can upgrade it to a 435 horsepower engine down the road, but that's extremely expensive. Well, that's actually only 15,000 more to upgrade the engine. So maybe we would do that, but honestly, we would also go with the U.S. design because screw the EU. Okay, I'm American. Actually, in this one instance, I think I like the EU option better. I don't know why we have such wide indicators. Huh. Weird. I like the EU version of this one better. But we do have the 3-point hitch on the front and the back, PTO on the front and the back, so it's a great large tractor to upgrade to. But again, that's down the road. That's $350,000 if we're going to go that route. So yeah, there's a lot of options for some big stuff. This 9R actually kind of looking kind of good for us too. Now the one thing I don't like about this is the fact that it doesn't have the front PTO, though it does appear to have a winch on the front or some sort of cable. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. I don't know. But it also is an articulating tractor, which does come in handy in some situations. So, will we end up getting this? Probably not. It's expensive. But anything that we get up in this area of the thing is going to be expensive. This Valtra is capable of 420 horsepower and starts at $254,000. And then, of course, we have this Massey Ferguson. I do like me some Valtras, but this Massey Ferguson as well kind of owes back to Little Red. So it would be kind of cool to bring back a Massey Ferguson tractor to show like Little Red and this thing side by side. You know what I mean? I'm a bit of a dork. I get it. But yeah, this is going to be a bit of an expensive upgrade if we were to go for this. But again, PTO on the front, as well as 3-point hitch on the front, as well as the back. So we have options. And now that you guys know what my plan is, one of the things that I want to do is come through and end up, after we make the decision to terraform all of this, like I say terraform, we're not going to go crazy with the terraforming, just mainly smoothing things out a little bit, just trying to make it look halfway decent, and then we want to come in with the plow or cultivator and break up all of this nasty like brush and stuff, and then turn this into a nice like even planted grass area. I think it'll look super nice when we're done with it. But that is a long ways down the road. For now, we got to get back to cutting up some wood and making some money so that we can buy the things that we want, right? So, once again, we'll cut everything down. This time, I think I will just go ahead, since we already have the time lapse of planting the trees, I think I'll go ahead and make sure that we simply jump cut to when we're selling the wood. All right, so here is our first truckload, ready to go. Should be another 50 grand in the bank. 51,000 this time. Nice, even better than the last time. We'll take it. Let's head back and get another load. Alright, so here we are with another load. Not gonna lie, this took a little bit longer than the previous load because I ended up stopping. I ran out of time to record, so this is a second piece of recording. Hopefully I make it edited together well enough for you guys. But I also learned some things. I did some testing off screen for you guys so that we could go over a few things before we call this an episode. But, with that being said, let's see how much money we make out of this. Should be another 50 grand. $51,000, almost even. Very nice. Alright, let's head back over to the store area, and then we will talk about some things. As we've got $155,000 in the bank. Like, I love how quickly we're able to make money right now, but that's kind of what we want to talk about next. Is how we can go to that next level. Like, currently, we have the ability to make a decent amount of money, but I am limited in my abilities due to our harvesting speed. The other thing that I'm getting annoyed with is the consistency of the log sizes. Our log sizes are all over the place because we don't have a really good way of doing things. Here on console, we don't have things like the lumberjack mod that allows us to like measure the lengths of our cuts or anything. So, yeah, we're kind of limited. But let's shut this thing down for a second and let's talk about some things. First of all, a couple things that you guys wanted to know. There was a couple people in the chat. I can't remember who particularly asked about it. But when it comes to filling up productions, I was asked if it matters if a tree is cut down to length or if it's a full tree when you drag it to the production zone. So off screen, I did a little bit of testing. I set up a sawmill, and I used a lodgepole pine, a singular lodgepole pine, fully grown. I saved after I cut the tree down, so every time that we used it, it was the exact same tree. It cut at the exact same length, and if it was untrimmed, I pulled it in, and we got the result of 5,316 liters. Okay, That was completely untrimmed, didn't take the branches off or nothing. We just simply drug it over, put it into the sawmill. Okay? The same tree with the branches trimmed off of it, but not cut into logs, was 5,316 liters. Exactly the same as the untrimmed version. So it doesn't matter whether you trim the branches off or you don't, when you're dragging it into your own production. I'm not talking about selling at the sawmill. It absolutely matters when you're selling logs, whether they're trimmed or untrimmed, whether they're cut into log lengths or whatnot. Okay. The last thing we did is we used a feller buncher to guarantee that we cut every piece of that same tree, the one that gave us 5,316 liters on the previous two. We cut them into 6-meter lengths to give us, I think it was total of 6 logs, right? So it would have been 5 full 6-meter logs and then one little chunk at the end that was like 5 and some odd change. But interestingly, we only got 5,300 liters that way, meaning you actually lose 16 liters by cutting it into logs. I'm assuming in chips because you got the saw blade cutting the logs, right? So you actually lose a little bit by cutting it into logs and dragging it into your production. So, in conclusion, it literally makes no difference. 16 liters isn't going to make the biggest difference in the world, but if you're trying to fill up production, dragging the entire tree over at one time, if you can, is absolutely the way to go, because it's less work, right? Obviously, like I've said in the past, like the northern catalpa tree, if you guys want to go in and we can go for a little cheaty thing real quick. We're not going to cheat for our playthrough. I'm simply going to let you guys know a little secret. So if you go into this area, you can actually plant any tree that you want, including lodgepole pines if you wanted to go that route, or the large northern catalpa. This is the largest tree in the game currently, and is the one that you want. If you can see how thick the base of this for volume. Okay. Now, one thing I will say is this is not a tree that you can use a feller buncher on. It's way too big, and it's an uneven tree. It's got branches that stick out all over the place. Okay. But you have to cut this tree into 2 or 3 sections in order to use the winch. The winch can only hold 6.6 tons. So if you're going to drag it with the winch, you got to cut it into sections. Okay. But this is the most volume you can get. So if you're going to fill up a production, obviously this is the way to go. You can also use the deadwood contracts. I've heard people using that to fill up your productions, so on and so forth. So if that's something you guys are interested in, go for it. That was just a question that we had in chat that I wanted to address beforehand. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to address before the end of this episode, and that is our goal for our next episode. Now, we already talked about we want to get a plow or something to be able to start to beautify our area over by our spring and set up everything to look nicer. I have done a little bit of testing off screen to figure out what is the best option for us going forward, if that is where we want to go with our current setup. And that would be this, it's a subsoiler, isn't it? I think it's a subsoiler. Yes. This Ozdoken, I don't know how it's pronounced. I'm going to say it's Ozdoken. But this little thing here is $12,500. It is a 4.1 meter working width and takes exactly 175 horsepower. It also comes with the ability to create fields. So you can create a field using this, and this is an absolutely a perfect little thing for us moving forward when we get into creating fields, aka when we go to make the area around our property much nicer and turn it into a grass field like we've been talking about. Okay, so that is one option for us. Okay, the next option is what I'm actually interested in doing first, which some of you might disagree with, but I am thinking about getting a feller buncher. And specifically, not the feller buncher here, because that's extremely expensive and only can do one thing. What I'm thinking is the excavator. Now, I did a little bit of testing off stream. And this first excavator, oh, sorry, didn't mean to bop you. This first excavator is not a good option. The reason being is it cannot pick up a tree, or it cannot attach a feller buncher big enough. You can see it does have the processor, but it is only capable of working a 70 centimeter tree trunk. That is too small for our lodgepole pines. Okay? So what we want is this one. It starts at $365,000. We would obviously get it with the harvester head, which costs us $32,000 more, bringing our total up to $397,500. Now, here's the important part. Not only do we get this when we buy this machine, but because we have our workshop back at our farm, what we would be able to do is cut down all the trees that we want, bunch them up into a nice section or whatever, and then we could use our workshop to then customize and switch over to the grapple. Okay? Doing this, we would then be able to load those logs much quicker and much simpler onto our truck, and thus making our job way easier. Okay? So, that is my thought process for the future of our farm. I will leave you guys to come up with your ideas of what I should do. You guys have been very forthcoming with your feedback and stuff, and I appreciate everybody who's hanging out with us and enjoying this series as much as I am. We have come a long way since the beginning, but we're only getting started. Like, yes, we're starting to make money finally, but we've got to spend that money wisely in order to build our future. Now, right now we're doing a lot of logging, so it makes sense for me to make that logging as efficient as possible. The other thing that we got to think about as we go forward is one of the things that we all talked about that we want for this series is to build a road from our property to the starting property, right? So be able to drive on a road all the way from our property all the way to the store and the sawmill and so on and so forth. And if we're going to do that, having a feller buncher is going to come in handy because we need to clear as direct a path as possible through the properties on our way there. Now, obviously, we have to buy those properties, and somebody actually made a great point about that as well. They said, why not buy the property, create the road, then sell the property? The road would stick around, and then you would be able to use that money because you get the same amount of money when you sell the property as you put into it to begin with. You minus the amount that you spend on creating the road, obviously, but they said, why not buy the property, make the road, sell it, buy the next property, make the road, sell it, buy the next property, make the road, and sell it. If that's what you guys want me to do, I'm all for that. But I personally would much rather just be over time, start making our way across the map. You know what I'm saying? So I know we've already bought this property here. Let me go over here to our farmland. So these are the two pieces of property we currently own. This property here is the next one that I was thinking about buying simply because of the arable possibilities. We saw already after we planted our forest in this episode that this area right over here is wide open and absolutely begging to be farmed. But as you can see, if we were to say buy the property here, that is $124,000. We could then extend the road from the shop area, which is right here, extend the road over, okay, and then once we're done with that, sell that property, grab, say, this property here or this property here. I don't know which, it just depends on which way we're looking at it, but, and then do the same thing. Clear the trees for the road, place the road, sell the property, buy this one, clear the trees for the road, place the road, sell the property, and make our way across the map that way. So I will leave it up to you guys to decide what you guys think we should do. And if that's what you guys want to do, that's what we will do. But I want you guys to be a part of this series. You guys have done a fantastic job of helping me along, and I appreciate that. So, with all of that being said, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.